Also, I wanted to apologize because in part 1 I didn't really do very much reading. I think I was so caught up in the pictures and the photography that I kind of just settled for flipping through and saying wow, which it seems like a lot of you really enjoyed, but I wanted to do a little more actual reading, since the video has reading in the thumbnail, and I was thinking I should probably actually make that accurate. So I left a little note where we last left off. So let's go ahead and go there. We left off at the hot springs in Arkansas. So let's go ahead and start from there, page 175. We've got this nice building here, and it says, modeled after some of the finest spas in Europe, the palatial bathing establishments of Bathhouse Row line Hot Springs' main thoroughfare. The splendors of this park are the creations of man. And we have a quote. It says it's Indian legend. As a reminder of his power to create good, the Great Spirit rent the earth, bringing forth pure, healing water. He asked that his favorite place be forever neutral ground, a place to partake of life and health. And we've got a picture here. And let's go ahead and go to the next page. It says, first settled in the early 1800s, the community of Hot Springs grew rapidly. In 1877, the creek that had originally run through the wooded mountain glen was roofed over and its natural course replaced by a broad avenue. And it says the present-day spas of Hot Springs, built in the early decades of this century, are embellished with stained glass windows, fountains, statuary, imported tiles, and gleaming marble floors. Still in use, the opulent bathhouses continue to attract visitors, some to partake of or bathe in the famous mineral waters, and others to marvel at the beauty of these mementos of a bygone era. We've got beautiful stained glass free in a few places now. In Canada, Alaska, and parts of northern Minnesota, hunting packs have access to many kinds of prey. On Isle Royale, they are almost totally dependent on moose and, in the summer, on beavers. The relationship between these three wilderness creatures is a classic story of nature's balance. And I did promise to actually do more reading, so I will read this section that is titled Blossom Time. Summer comes in a rush, beginning in mid-June. The air is alive with mosquitoes, black flies, and midges. All swarm around the heads and flanks of adult moose. The calves are well protected by their woolly coats. Dainty clusters of diminutive calypso orchids, forgive me if I said that wrong, the most elegant of Isle Royale's 34 wild orchid species, have sprung up from the rich mold of shady woodlands, and the fiddleheads of ferns are unfurling. Iris and clumps of yellow lady slipper orchids edge the bogs, where, among thick mats of tawny sphagnum and the spare finery of cranberry, insect-eating pitcher plants rear their nodding flower heads and spread their leafy traps. Perhaps I chose the wrong section to read. I didn't consider some of these words that I might not know how to pronounce. Trees and shrubs are in full leaf, and the island is a feasting ground for moose. Sometime near the last of June, the wolf family abandons the needle den and moves by night to another location, usually the edge of an open wood near water, and if possible, a grassy meadow. Here, the pups establish beds, trails, and digs. They exercise, contest for dominance among themselves, and even begin to hunt the moving insects or other small creatures that show themselves. No longer dependent on mother's milk, they joyously greet the return of the adults from a hunt, nipping and licking at their jaws. This is more than an affectionate gesture. It is a biological trigger, guaranteed to produce a semi-solid meal of regurgitated food. In the course of this summer, there may be 3 or 4 more of these childcare centers, or rendezvous areas, where the pack is temporarily headquartered, and from which the young begin to venture out with the adults to travel and hunt. During their first year, one of learning by trial and many errors, the pups will have extraordinary privileges in dealing with their tolerant elders. And then they will be on their own as responsible adults, and must conform to the pack's precise relationships of dominance and submission. Tagging along behind its long-legged mother, the moose calf bleats from time to time for food and rest. It will not be completely weaned until August. It has grown into an odd, gnomish creature, although its body is clearly becoming that of a moose, the most massive member of the deer family. Its head remains small and stubby. Not until fall will it begin to develop the long moose face, complete with the characteristically bulbous snout. At that time, too, round velvety knobs will begin to sprout on the foreheads of bull calves. Rudimentary indications of future antlers. And there we have one. In his second summer of adulthood, a young bull moose's stubby antlers merely hint at the great wrecks to come. As a yearling, he wore antlers that were little more than spikes. We have some foliage here. The delicate blossoms of gaywings, or fringed polygala, less than an inch long, arise in early summer from the rich forest floor. When a bee lands on the blossom's fringe in search of nectar, its weight opens the flower a little. Isle Royale's many lakes, beaver ponds, bogs, and swamplands support a varied wealth of aquatic and waterside plants, such as this cluster of marsh marigolds, and are ideal habitats for ducks, kingfishers, loons, National Park in California. Percy Shelley. Is this the scene where the old earthquake demon taught her young ruin? Were these their toys, or did a sea of fire envelop once this silent snow? Intricate sulfur crystals, the rolling painted dunes, and brooding cinder cone are among the products of these intense heat that rages beneath the peaceful surface of Lassen Volcanic Park. Imagine for a moment that from time immemorial, a marvelous magical camera has been taking pictures of Lassen Volcanic National Park. Imagine, too, that by pressing a special button on one side of the camera, you are able to speed up the sequence of photos showing the distance passed. Now, as you watch, Lassen's explosive life rapidly unfolds. Millennia stream by in minutes. In quick motion, a 10,000-foot volcano blows off its top, spewing a mushroom cloud of steam and ash high into the air. Simultaneously, a wall of furnace-red lava gushes from deep within the mountain and plunges inexorably down its slopes, destroying everything in its path. There we have a really, really cool picture of what it says is cinder cone, and it says seen from the air. Cinder cone looks more like a big tinted sand castle than an 800-foot high cratered volcanic cone made of volcanic cinders. The cone was formed by a series of eruptions less explosive than those of Lassen Peak. Smoky clouds smelling of sulfur cannot obscure the steaming springs, hissing fumaroles, and gurgling mud pots in Bump as Hell, Lassen's most famous thermal valley. The snow plant's scarlet flower head is often the first sign of new life to appear on Lassen's forest floor, poking through the late winter snow. Creating a zigzag pattern on the grass of the hot springs area near Mount Diller, shallow pools are dyed a striking hue by red algae in the water. Pigments in the algae mask its green, although the groundwater can become quite hot, heated by molten rock coursing near the Earth's surface. The park supports rich and varied habitats, flowering meadows, dense forests, and cool, limpid lakes, as well as boiling springs, hot lakes, and streams, and other thermal features. And I love this image. As an autumn mist retreats, the graceful spires of a forest of red fir come into sharp focus. Rising from a dense growth of shrubby manzanita, come next summer, the manzanita will once again be adorned with edible berries. A parasol-topped mushroom stands at the height of its maturity, but its neighbor, a hemlock seedling, will one day surpass 100 feet in height. When courting, a blue grouse proudly shows off his mating colors by raising his ruff and fanning his tail. His booming, ventriloquistic song is amplified by the inflatable air sacs that bulge beneath the yellow patches on his neck. And we have Mammoth Cave, Kentucky. And we've got some cool images here. And then we have a quote by George Gordon, Lord Byron. Beneath, the distant torrent's rushing sound tells where the volumed cataract doth roll between those hanging rocks, that shock yet please the soul. And about this picture, great chambers and fantastical formations await all who venture into Mammoth Cave. An eerie yet awesome underground world shelters creatures as varied as bats and blind fish. And this looks like a scene out of Phantom of the Opera. A cruise on the Echo River in Mammoth's deepest depths is a highlight for many cave visitors. The remarkably loud and mellow reverberation of sounds along its route earned the river its name. Echo River. Dripping with tier upon tier of gracefully fluid flowstone, Mammoth's frozen Niagara is a wintry-looking cascade of solid rock that stands some 75 feet high. The delicate gypsum flowers that decorate the walls of many of the cave's drier areas, in contrast, are seldom more than 6 inches in diameter. These, and all the other formations that are found in many parts of the cave, were deposited over the eons by mineral-laden water, seeping from pores and fissures in the cavern's walls and ceilings. And then I don't know if you can see this little fella. I love this little fella. It says blind and colorless, like most of Mammoth Cave's permanent residents. The dainty little cave crayfish relies on its long and sensitive antenna to locate prey in the underworld's never-ending night. And here we have, remember from the first video I was talking about those formations that looked like castles. Now these are actually cities. That is very cool, and I love when you see things like that, you usually don't expect snow to be on the trees. But I think it's just beautiful. I love seeing that contrast. And it says, by Willa Cather, I saw a little city of stone asleep. That village sat looking down into the canyon with the calmness of eternity, preserved in the dry air and almost perpetual sunlight like a fly in amber, guarded by the cliffs and the river and the desert. And it says, this is the only U.S. national park devoted to the works of early man. Mesa Verde holds mysteries yet unsolved about the artisans who made cities on canyon walls with tools of stone and fashioned exquisite pottery from coils of clay. The Spanish-speaking people who named Mesa Verde, the name means green table, never saw it from the air, as in this view looking northward over Chapin Mesa. Had they done so, the name would certainly still be the same. And then we have another diagram, another map, just showing the park. Mug House was named for the treasure trove of ancient pottery that was discovered among its ruins. Park Point, at 8,571 feet above sea level, is the highest point in the park. Atop a high cliff, it overlooks the Montezuma Valley, some 2,000 feet below. Spruce Canyon is one of many steep, walled gorges eroded onto the surface of the southward sloping Mesa Verde tableland. Cliff Palace, the largest ruin in the park, is perched on a cave-like niche, high on a canyon wall. Now we'll move on. This must be Cliff Palace. This is you can tell it's a rendering mixed with a real image. sunny summer afternoon, you can easily populate the scene in your mind's eye with the life of 7 centuries ago. The rooms in the front were living quarters, storage rooms were behind them. The open court was a busy place. While most of the men were away hunting, gathering wood, and tending crops, the women ground corn with handheld stones called manos, cooked and prepared food for storage, and did dozens of other jobs in preparation for winter. Building was a continuous process. Like the Anasazi of 700 years ago, today's visitors reach the upper levels of Longhouse by climbing rough wooden ladders, second in size only to Cliff Palace. Longhouse is located in the largest alcove ever occupied in the Mesa. The importance of this sacred kiva to the cliff dwellers of Mesa Verde is clearly seen by the amount of space it commanded and the work that went into its construction. Note the opening of the ventilation shaft in the foreground. And in Washington, we have Mount Rainier. And a quote from Joseph Wharton: "Midst broken rocks, a rugged scene, with green and grassy dales between, where nature seems to sit alone, majestic on a craggy throne." Abroad in all seasons, the red fox is one of many wild creatures that roam the rugged slopes of Mount Rainier, a peak so tall and so massive that it completely dominates its lowland surroundings. And another map. Columbia Crest, a rise that reaches to 14,410 feet on the rim of Rainier's summit crater, is the mountain's highest point. The Emmons Glacier, 4.5 miles long and more than a mile wide, is the largest glacier in the lower 48 states. Paradise Valley is among the snowiest places in the country. It once received a grand total of 93.5 feet of snow in a single winter season. Dwarfed by the immensity of the mountain, a line of climbers approaches Rainier's lofty summit crater. The snow-filled basin, some 1,400 feet in diameter, was created when the volcano last erupted around 2,500 years ago. The Liberty Cap, rising to the rear, is actually about 300 feet lower than the crater's rim. Seemingly oblivious of his surroundings, that's Rainier in the background, a climber assaults a peak in the Tatoosh Range, just south of the mighty volcano. This is fascinating. This is fascinating. It looks like something out of a sci-fi movie. It says aglow with glittering, jewel-like colors. The walls of the Paradise ice caves were gracefully sculpted and scalloped by air currents, blowing through the hollows that wind beneath Paradise Glacier. More baby animals, you guys. With the return of warm weather in early summer, black-tailed deer wishes to see nature in all its primitive glory and grandeur, and its almost ferocious wildness, must go and visit these mountain regions. And we'll do a little reading off of this page. Although Sourdough Mountain is far from the tallest peak in North Cascades National Park, it is only 6,106 feet high. Its summit seems like the top of the world. That is only partly because you must make a steep 5-mile climb to reach its crowning snowfields, rocky ridges, and meadows open to the sun. Mostly, it is because of the view. Located near the center of the park, Sourdough is completely surrounded by jagged peaks. Glaciers glisten in the bright sunshine, contrasting sharply with the gray rocks that cradle them. Below the craggy pinnacles, dark green forests cover the slopes like a rough, textured blanket. Splendid in all seasons, the North Cascades attract climbers, even in the depths of winter. Among the wild creatures that survive the frigid wintry weather are snowshoe hares, mountain goats, and a host of others. This land has mountains, and it has ice. Many of the peaks, sculpted long ago, during the ice ages, by massive glaciers, still have glaciers clinging to the slopes. Their survival depends on moisture-laden winds blowing in from the Pacific, which supply the snow needed to maintain these slow-moving rivers of ice. Here, looming beyond Cascade Pass in the southern part of the park, is the craggy, barren summit of Magic Mountain. The dainty blossoms of the lovely crimson columbine, dangling from the tips of delicate stems, dance in response to the slightest of breezes. And in this picture, steep and precipitous, that is the meaning of the Indian word Shuksan. And clearly, it is a fitting description of Mount Shuksan, one of the most impressive of the towering glacier-capped peaks in this mountain wilderness. Olympic National Park in Washington. And a quote from Henry Longfellow again. This is the forest primeval. Loud from its rocky caverns, the deep-voiced neighboring ocean speaks, and in accents disconsolate answers the wail of the forest. In the lush, moss-draped world of the Olympic rainforest, life seems to flourish everywhere, from the yellow fungus clinging to an ancient stump to ferns on the forest floor. Myriads of life forms add to the beauty of the scene. These sea stacks, standing like sturdy offshore sentinels, originally were part of the Olympic mainland. They are the eroded remnants of headlands that once projected out to sea. Eventually, they too will be demolished by the surf. Black oyster catchers, year-round residents of Olympic coasts, specialize in a diet of mollusks, but settle for occasional worms and crabs as well. Low tide reveals a wealth of life on these rugged shores, including festoons of the kelp called sea cabbage, sea urchins bristle with spines, colorful starfish of several species, and sponges that cover the rocks with a crust-like growth. And we have another map of Olympic National Park. And we have Lake Sutherland. Lake Sutherland was once part of Lake Crescent. The two were separated long ago by a massive avalanche. This is Lake Sutherland. I don't know if you can see, it's really small. Hall of Mosses Trail, less than 1 mile long, offers a fine introduction to Olympic Olympics rainforest. Mount Olympus, rising to 7,965 feet, is the park's highest peak. Several glaciers descend its rugged slopes. Ruby Beach is backed by wave-carved cliffs, overlooking splendid offshore sea stacks, remnants of eroded headlands. Let's go ahead and read this. A lush green world. Step into the Olympic rainforest, and you will sense both the flow of time and the interdependence of life. Moss upholstered trees, already ancient when American settlers first came west, still stand in cathedral-like splendor. Sitka spruce grow larger here than anywhere else on Earth, and beneath their somber heights, vine maple spreads a lacy green canopy. On most days, mist filters through the forest, closing in upon itself, but occasionally sunlight streams through the foliage and spotlights the forest floor. Give yourself to this forest for even an hour, and you will begin to appreciate the wealth of life that flourishes here. For a forest is far more than trees. It is a whole community of living things. The snowshoe hare, watching from its secret hiding place. The Douglas squirrel, poised by a patch of turkey tail. The minute fluff of a kinglet. Or a winter wren. These two are part of the forest. So are the lowly millipede and the oversized banana slug. Surprisingly, Roosevelt elk serve as a landscape architect. Their browsing determines where various plants can live. Sword fern manages to survive despite heavy pruning by elk, but logs quickly disintegrate as elk paw them to feast on obscure fungi that they locate by smell, ignoring the more accessible kinds that humans regard as delicious, such as the chanterelle, or deadly, such as the amanita, bead ruby, vanilla leaf, lady fern, and maidenhair fern. They suffer trampling, but no significant browsing. Visit here, and a multitude of sensory memories will be yours forever. There is the wind rustling the trees and brushing across your cheek. There is the wind rustling the trees and brushing across your cheek. The beauty of a spiderweb clearly visible against your shadow. The silent green flash of a surprised tree frog, hopping to safety, and the white flick of outer tail feathers and annoyed chit of a junco, taking sudden flight. All this and more make up the verdant realm of the Olympic rainforest. Constantly replenished by frequent rains and melting snow, streams and rivers in the Olympics rush headlong from the heights to the sea, sometimes making spectacular leaps along the way, like this one at lovely Sequoia-Kings. And beating its wings, a ruffled grouse celebrates spring with a loud drumming that echoes through the woods. bodies of stone, gem-studded and intershot with infinite colors. The park holds the largest and brightest collection of petrified wood ever discovered. Tiny kangaroo rats survive the heat of the day by plugging the entrances to their burrows from within, sealing in humidity. They never drink, but get all of the water that they need from the many small seeds they gather at night. Even on the barren, convoluted moonscape of the painted desert, where the brightest colors are often displayed in the banded dunes and long dead trees, life persists. Sparse grasses and brush support a wide range of birds and beasts. Redwood National Park in California. With a quote from Cedric Wright, "From their mute forms there flows a poise, and silence a lovely sound and motion in response to wind. What peace comes to those aware of the voice and bearing of trees? As though to brush the sky with their delicate foliage, California's redwood trees, the tallest living things on earth, stretch upward. Centuries hold, these giants can not only survive fires, but heal themselves with hardly a scar." The lovely but deadly Amanita muscaria, or fly agaric, is among the many mushrooms that grow in the shade of the mighty redwoods. And we've got a cute deer on the side. I was going to call it little, but it's full grown. That's a black-tailed deer. On the right we have some beautiful trees and a little stream, and on the left, the Steller's jay, a raucous denizen of conifer forests throughout the West. It is a notorious pilferer. It steals food and eggs from the nests of other birds, and has even been known to snatch tasty morsels from campers' tables. And I like this page already. We've got these beautiful little flowers. Then it says, "Among the tough yet delicate-looking flowers that flourish along the seashore are beach morning glories and sand verbenias." And on the left, "The grass at the edge of the continent seems to run all the way down to meet the sea. California's northern coast is both rugged and peaceful, a place where harbor seals bask atop surf-pounded rocks. Just inland, the mighty redwoods tower, the titans of the seas, gray whales, can sometimes be seen not far offshore." I really like the vibes of this page. It gives off very calm, very sweet vibes. I really enjoy this. Rocky Mountain National Park in Colorado, with another quote from John Muir. "Climb the mountains and get their good tidings. Nature's peace will flow into you as sunshine flows into trees." And this view on the left, it looks like a shot from The Sound of Music. I know it's completely different mountains, but I really do enjoy just the peaceful aura that it gives off. It says, "Snow is permanent atop the peaks of the Never Summer Range, part of the Great Divide." This is beautiful. This is another one of those shots, like the Purple Mountains from episode 1. It says, "Aptly named Dream Lake, nestled calm and blue at the foot of 713-foot Hollet Peak, is one of the park's many idyllic settings, where, in the clear mountain air, hushed conifer forests surround grassy meadows." You know, I don't know if it's conifer or conifer, but I know that usually when referring to a whole forest, they'll say coniferous. Unless I'm making that up. This page has 3 points it wants you to look at. Emerald Lake, like many others in the Rockies, is a tarn. It occupies a basin that was scooped out by an Ice Age glacier. Tundra Trail, high it says, at 14,255 feet elevation, Long's Peak is the park's highest mountain. The mighty glaciers that carved this rugged landscape did not come from the north, but were born atop the peaks whose granite sides they sheared away. And the bighorn sheep. And finally, we have Sequoia and Kings Canyon in California. And I'm going to trace these because I love this picture. But this is where we're going to stop for tonight. We'll start back up at the next park on part 3. I didn't expect for this to take 3 parts. I can't imagine what it would be like if this book actually had all 63 in them. Thank you for joining me, and I hope to see you next time. Thank you.